Oh, here we are. Welcome, everyone, to the Squid and Ultimate Leaf Fan Show. I'm Mike Wilson, the Ultimate Leafs fan. Joining me, as always, my winger, Ricky Squid Vibe. Squid, we're officially at the 20-game mark. The Leafs 13-6-1 off a rocky start, including 2 5-game winning streaks. Thoughts overall so far?
Well, I'm pretty positive about the whole thing. The thing again, I can't say enough is their ability to win those low scoring close games, and they've been able to do that. And that is something that you didn't see from this hockey club in the past. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really good. And if they can continue to do that for the rest of the season, that is really going to help them going into the playoffs because that's what playoff hockey is all about. And of course, Campbell's playing lights out. I mean, he's at the top of the goalie rankings in almost every category. And, so if he keeps playing the way he is and the team keeps playing as good as they are defensively, I mean, they're not giving up a lot of opportunities, at least in the games that they're winning, and that's the way they need to play.
Well, before we get into specifics, the 20-game mark or the quarter mark of the season lands around U.S. Thanksgiving, which is tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into that, is that you as a player, were you conscious of this part of the schedule? Because everybody talks about this as when changes we made, the coaches do a reevaluation, see where they're at. Was this sort of a time where you'd be a little antsy, or even you would notice other teammates getting a little bit anxious?
Yeah, sometimes I would see other teammates, especially guys that are on two-way contracts that
Yeah.
have come up and or they made the team, and they're playing okay, and but they're worried because, like you said, this is kind of when they start
Yeah.
thinking about what changes can we make to make the team better. And you can see just yesterday, Kyle Clifford gets called up, that Joey Anderson gets sent back down. And so that, yeah, there was a lot of guys. And, I mean, all you could do is just sit down beside them and just say, hey, look, you can't worry about it. You got to go out and do your job on the ice. Whatever happens, happens. And trust me, whatever you do on the ice is going to have a bearing on what they do with you, whether they send you down or they keep you. But I didn't worry about it. I mean, hell, I was on a one-way contract my whole
Yeah.
career,
Well,
so it really,
we have to be
you
humble
know,
somewhat about this, Squid. So I knew you
yeah.
were in the troubles. We're trying to be humble about the whole thing. Because also keep in
Well,
mind,
yeah.
keep in mind also the coaches, they're on watch also 20 games in, because if this
Mm-hmm.
team is performing, a bullet goes to their head pretty quickly too. So they're also on alert too. So would you ever notice coaches being maybe a little maybe over a little overzealous, or maybe over coaching a little bit, if there's such a term? I mean, let's face it, we know everybody's on watch until the trade deadline. Everybody always is. But this is very
Yeah.
critical because this is where you can save a season. It looks like you may be losing it.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll be honest with you, my coaches, guys I had, I mean, especially in Toronto, I mean, I don't think anything was going to happen at this point in the season with any of the coaches we had. And they knew that they were there because they weren't going to pay them and bring another coach in and pay them as well,
Yeah.
because that wasn't going to happen in Toronto. And, so,
They were
um,
safe.
and other places the coaches felt secure. I mean, Mike Keenan in Chicago, Rick Dudley in Buffalo had a good run there with us in Buffalo. So he didn't really have to worry about it until John Muckler came in and kind of took over as general manager. He fired Rick 16 games into my last season there, and and then he took over as coach. And then that's when I saw the press box.
Well, so, I mean, and speaking of the coaches, did they ever say anything to the players also? Because they're aware that everybody knows this is kind of that time between now and Christmas when, if you're going to take a charge or you're going to let that season slip away and something has, like, let's not say it's that vote of confidence endorsement, because that usually is the first path to a new city when somebody says that to you. Okay. So,
Mm-hmm.
but did you ever see any of that over your years? I mean, no, the coaches didn't change a lot in Toronto, but you do have to keep the players calm.
Yeah, I mean, that's the unfortunate part about my time in Toronto is that the coaches didn't keep the guy. Mike Nickluck was the only guy that really kept guys, you know, grounded and like calm because he had that ability. He would call guys in and just have a conversation with them, and
Hmm.
it
Yep.
wasn't necessarily always about hockey, but hey kid, you're playing well, just keep it up, keep working hard, and and then you'll be here for as long as you play as hard as you are right now. That's how long you're going to be here. And but he was about the only coach that I think I ever had that probably instilled that confidence and that calmness in the players
Hmm.
because none of the other guys did.
Well, because they're all on watch themselves. They were worrying about their own
Well,
safety.
and yeah, you're probably right. Yeah,
Said, hell with those guys. I'm worrying about me. I want to let me get an
yeah, they were
extension.
worried about themselves. Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
let's get back to the team. Who's impressed you so far after 20 games? We mentioned Campbell.
Well, obviously Campbell. I mean, you know what? The other guys I expect from them, like Tavares, Nylander, Matthews, Marner, uh, even Kerfoot for that matter. I mean, he's a pretty good player. He's got great wheels. I expect them to be, in the scoring and that sort of thing. Although 5-on-5, there's a few of them that aren't putting up that many points. They're putting them up on
Yeah.
the power play. Um, Other than that, you know what? I nobody has really stood out. Other than that third line of Kasha,
Yeah.
Kemp, and Engvall. I thought they played extremely well, and they worked their tails off, and I love watching them play because they're in on the forecheck, they're banging, they're crashing, they're creating offensive opportunities, they're killing penalties, they're blocking shots. I mean, they're doing
Yeah, right.
everything. So you got to love those guys. You have to have guys like that on your team in your bottom six if you're going to win.
Well, and Wayne Simmons must have heard our show last week because he seemed to pick his game up the last few games and was a little more of the Wayne Simmons they were looking for. But what I particularly like was the steady play of the D. It's been very refreshing. The attention to lockdown by the forwards with the lead has been very encouraging, especially with the goal differential at
Mm-hmm.
+6, where this is a team you'd expect it to be like +30 or plus something, trying to outscore
Yeah.
everybody and win games 10-8 or something. But, that's a small concern, but I think that's something that pucks will start going in eventually because these players are just too good to keep them off the score sheet forever. But as we've said many times in this show, and this certainly isn't saying they're going to win the Stanley Cup, but when they did win the Stanley Cup under Steve Yzerman, he scored 23 goals after being a 50 and 60 goal scorer. So keep that in mind, folks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you know what? Something there's times where you have to understand as a player that okay, yeah, I'm a great goal scorer and maybe I can score 40, 50 goals, but if I score 38 and we win, then then I've done my job. And but I've got to play in both ends of the rink. And I think right now that's what I'm seeing from this
Yes,
hockey club.
that's right.
Is for the most part they are playing a real good 200-foot game. Forwards are coming back on the back check, and they're doing a pretty good job. Like even Sandine and Dermott and Lilligren, who are in and out of the lineup, they've actually done a pretty good job. And again, it's like I said, they need to play because they need to find out if they're capable of playing at that level. And I
Mm-hmm.
said the same thing about another young man, Joseph
Joseph
Wall,
Wall.
who got his first shutout in the National Hockey League, his second win. He's 2-0. And again, you have to find out if this kid can play or not because you're not sure what's going to happen with Mrazek. When he does come back, he may end up getting hurt again. We just don't know. You need a guy
Mm-hmm.
playing in the minor leagues that can come up and get the job done at the National League level. And now they're starting to find out that this kid can.
Well, and I think what the team is finally sinking in, and this started back in the Mike Babcock era, so we have to give his kudos a little bit to that. The fact that it's more about keeping the puck out of your net than it is outscoring them at the other end that wins down the road. And I think that is sinking in, and you're seeing it in the play of these players. So it is starting to come through. So that's very, as I've said already, that's very refreshing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I mean, I see guys coming back and busting their butts back to play defense and that sort of thing, and forwards I'm talking about. Uh, I think it's great. I love it because I mean, that's the only way you're going to win, Mike. That's the only
Mhm,
way that when you get to
mhm.
the playoffs,
Yep.
that's how you win in the playoffs. And you don't win by outscoring teams in the playoffs because you get shut down a lot of times. This is really going to help them going forward if they can continue to do this.
All right. The name that comes up every week and has for the last couple weeks, Nick Ritchie. What do we do with him? At some point, a tough decision is going to have to be made. He had some positive shifts the last few games, but he has to be way more consistent. Maybe if he could, without stating the obvious, which I am here, if he could pot a couple one night, it would maybe take the piano off his back. Then maybe we'd see the player they were looking for. But at some point,
Yeah.
something has to be done.
Well, I think, like you said, you're at the 20 game mark. I don't think you give him any more than five more games. I think you give him 5 games and you say, and he's going back in to play a team he played on in Anaheim on this road trip.
Hmm.
Uh, you give him 5 games, and I mean, if this continues, you're going to have to do something. And my first thing is you try and move him, which I think is going to be nearly impossible with his salary and what he's done so far. So the only other option is to send him to the Marlies, and then his salary does not count on the cap. And I know that's harsh, but I mean, you need to win. And you need someone who's going to do a lot more than what he's doing right now if you're going to, you know, win at the end of the year.
Well, I watched a couple Barley games last week, and the play of Alex Steves and Josh Hosang, they're going to get a shot at some point if they keep this up. Now, Hosang would have to be signed to an NHL contract and fit in under the cap, but I suspect that management is waiting, if possible, before pulling the trigger. That they're going to hopefully he scores himself out of this or gets himself back on track. And I'm referring to Richie, but at some point you're going to have down the road, Ilya Mikheyev is ready to return at some point in the next three or
Mm-hmm.
4 weeks. And he's going to be forced, and that's going to strengthen those bottom six up, and it's going to push somebody up into the top six. So there's going to be fighting for job competitions, which is what we want to see. And you notice we're talking about the forwards. We're not talking about the defense, which is nice to hear for change with Toronto Maple Leafs when they're
Yeah.
concerned. And you already touched on Bunting, Case, Cache, Kemp, how well they're playing. But and
Yeah.
Bunting, we have to give him his dues also. He seems to be getting more comfortable every game, and hopefully a few pucks going for him, and then that'll just open things up a little bit. Not quite as skilled as the guy used to play in there in front of him, but you know what? He's making up for it.
Yeah, I mean, I like the way he plays. He drives the net. He's not afraid to get in there and into the corners and mix it up to get loose pucks and get them to the skill guys that do the damage. And then he's got 4 goals himself, so that's not too shabby for a guy. Yeah, he's played on the top line, but then he got moved down to the fourth line, and he's been moving around a little bit. So good for him. I mean, you know, I, they right now they're in a good situation, and I am pretty sure that Dubas and they're looking to improve. And I would think that probably when you get closer to the trade deadline, I'm pretty sure they're going to move some young talent. I think probably for somebody with a little more experience and fill out the blue line maybe with one more
Yeah.
good defenseman that has some experience. But I mean up front, I don't know if I'd make too many changes other than replace Richie if he continues to play the way he is with somebody else that will come in and do a little bit more. But I do believe before the deadline, they're going to have to somehow strengthen their defense with one more experienced defenseman.
Well, they got this road trip off to a good start in Long Island the other night. Again, you mentioned on Joseph Voll with his shutout.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the first shutout I read for Toronto Maple Leafs against the New York Islanders in Long Island in their history, if you can believe that.
Wow.
So that's a good start there. Now, I think we should probably have the Led Zeppelin song Going to California playing as we're sort of going through this part of the segment, because it's that time again for the quote of the week. And with 3 games in California over the next 4 days, it's only fitting. Nothing really too crazy, but we just want to give the boys a little reminder of what it's all about and what they're chasing. So here we go with this week's quote of the week, Squid. I know you love this, so here we go.
Oh yeah,
So you're all set. Talent wins games, but teamwork and intelligence win championships.
yeah, 100%, 100%. I mean, yeah, you need talent for the other part to win championships, but you need hard work and discipline and a lot of other things that fall into play. I mean, let's face it, it's probably the hardest trophy in all of professional sports or amateur sports to win. I don't think there's one that's harder to win than the Stanley Cup, and you got to win 16 games. I mean, it is very, very difficult. So they're on the right track, Mike, and I like that quote. And hopefully, which I'm sure they will, they'll hear that quote from you, and that's going to sink. That's going to sink in, and they're going to go on another roll.
Well, they are. They're all having an afternoon nap, and they just woke up and they tuned in to listen to what we have to say today. So we're giving the boys some inspiration. So we'll go and get them, guys. So again, till next week, same time, same place. Don't forget to tune in this week's episode of Squid and the Ultimate Leaf Fan. A beauty on the show this week with Ethan Morrow. You've got a funny nickname. Not a real outstanding way he got the nickname, but you got to tune in and listen to that. Great guy. You can see why this guy's just oozes leadership qualities. Very funny, very opinionated. Great guy. You spent some time with him doing some Legends games, so you can sort of attest to that. But definitely worth a listen, I would say. Wouldn't you, Squid?
Oh, there's no question. I mean, he talks about a lot of things, especially his career and how it evolved and everything else. And, you know, the thing I liked about that was that he didn't talk about himself that much. He kind of downgraded the type of player he was, like, and that sort of thing, and focus more on the teams that he was on. And I love that. I think it was fantastic. I think if more players were like that, I think it would be great.
Well, just a little teaser we'll give you. Not going to give you a funny one, but a serious one where he first started playing in Chicago and they put him in a top 6 role. And he went to the coach and said, I'm not a top 6 player at this point. I'll be your best bottom 6 player, so put me there. And 16 years later, and captain of the Edmonton Oilers, he knew what he was talking about. Now, think of how many 18-year-olds would say that. Not very many.
I mean, when you said that, it's like how many kids, 18, 19, 20, even 21 years old, when they're put in the top 6, would go to the coach and say, I'm not a top 6 forward, but I'll be your best bottom 6. I don't think there's too many guys that would do that. And they would want that opportunity to play in the top 6, where he knew if we're going to win, I can't play in the top 6. I got to play in the bottom 6. And hey, that's why he was a leader and a captain.
Well, now also, I have to get this one because this was one of my favorites of our interview with Ethan, was how many 18-year-olds also would look at Harry Sinden during his interview going into the entry draft. And Harry says, what number would you wear if you played for the Boston Bruins? And he looks back at Harry and says, I was thinking of 4 or 8. So, by the way, for folks, if you're not aware, that's Bobby Orr, Johnny Piersick. So, that's pretty legendary.
I mean, when he said that, I was like, who would say that to Harry Sinden, like when they're 18 years old? I mean, that's insane. I wouldn't even think of saying that to Harry Sinden now, let alone when I was 18 years old.
So there you have it, folks. We give you the great preview on Ethan's interview with us. Listen to that. Drops Friday at 6 o'clock on all the usual outlets that we're on, YouTube and all our the Squid and the Ultimate Leaf Fan page. You can go to all that, look for it. And until next week, enjoy the games this week from California.